After I get my vaccine, I know that I'm protecting the people who are around me every day.
Getting the vaccine and getting vaccinated, and just feels like it's coming to an end.
I want to help. I want to do a good thing, and I know this is a good thing.
In the last 150 days, more than 1.31 billion coronavirus vaccine doses have been administered across 175 countries. It is the biggest vaccination campaign the world has ever seen. The cure for the deadly coronavirus that has claimed 3 million lives has still not been found, and vaccination is being seen as the only long-term solution. The global race to vaccinate is underway. Which countries are leading the race? What are the challenges? How do the vaccines help in breaking the chain of transmission? Which are the most effective vaccines? Are there any side effects? When will children be able to get the shots? And can vaccines end the pandemic? As of April 2021, 14 vaccines have been authorized for public use. This includes 2 RNA vaccines, Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna, conventional inactivated vaccines like Covaxin, and viral vector vaccines like Sputnik V. Oxford AstraZeneca, also known as Covishield, among others. So, how effective are these vaccines? Studies are pointing at vaccine efficacy being around the 80 to 90% mark, or above. Now, let's see how countries are rolling out their vaccine program.
Our goal by July 4th is to have 70% of adult Americans with at least one shot and 160 million Americans fully vaccinated. That means giving close to 100 million shots, some first shots, others second shots, over the next 60 days. Of course, Americans can still get shots after July 4th, but no one should wait. Let's try to hit that 70% mark, at least with one shot before that day.
Come July 4th, and we may witness a majority of Americans celebrating their Independence Day, fully protected against COVID-19. In 2020, COVID-19 was the second leading cause of death. Johns Hopkins University reported that it killed more than 90 people per 100,000. But now the United States is racing to vaccinate a population of 328 million people. So far, 3 vaccines are authorized to be used in the country: Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna, that are double-dose-based vaccines, and the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine, which requires only one shot. On average, 3 million Americans are getting vaccinated daily. The United States witnessed an 11% vaccination decline in the month of April. According to experts, vaccine hesitancy, especially among conservatives and racial minorities, is hindering the drive. In order to persuade more people to take a vaccine, the US president has promised tax credits for employers that give their workers paid time off to receive and recover from inoculations. And here at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., those rolling up their sleeves also got a free beer. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser tweeted, and we quote, "Come get vaccinated and grab a beer on us to enjoy what looks to be a beautiful Thursday." Now that's a creative way to promote vaccines. With the aim of expanding the inoculation drive, on May 10th, US Food and Drug Administration also approved the Pfizer vaccine for adolescents aged 12 to 15. Before this, every American above age 16 was eligible for the shot. It's the first COVID-19 vaccine to be authorized in the United States for this age group, and is being seen as an important milestone for getting children back into schools safely. The first nation in the world to authorize the use of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine in children aged 12 to 15 was Canada. The authorization was based on the results of Pfizer-BioNTech's Phase 3 clinical trial involving 2,260 adolescents. All other COVID-19 vaccine makers approved by Health Canada, such as Moderna, AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson, are only for adults. Canada has a population of about 37.7 million people, and more than 14 million people have now had at least one dose, which equates to about 37% of the population. Canada does not have the capability to manufacture the shots at home and has relied entirely on buying vaccines from other nations. Coronavirus restrictions have been eased in Mexico's capital as the region moved into the yellow tier of Mexico's city's color-coded COVID-19 restrictions. The yellow tier means restaurants, gyms and movie theaters can increase capacity. Residents of the city will also be able to attend open-air concerts and sporting events at limited capacities. The ease of restrictions has come at a time when Mexico is struggling with behind-schedule local AstraZeneca production and shortfalls in vaccine deliveries from foreign suppliers, including Pfizer. The vaccination program is also hit by the non-deliveries of the second dose of Russia's Sputnik V. Only 4% of the nation's 128 million citizens have received at least one dose of the vaccines available. Many wealthy Mexicans are flying out to get their shots. Mauricio Fernandez Garza, a former mayor of San Pedro Garza Garcia, was among those who traveled to the United States to get a COVID-19 vaccine. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has criticized wealthier countries that have stockpiled large amounts of vaccines, but have not used them. More than 218,000 Mexicans have died from the disease, the fourth highest tally in the world. Brazil's death toll in the coronavirus pandemic surpassed 400,000, second only to the United States. The South American country also has one of the highest mortality rates in the pandemic, at 189 deaths per 100,000 inhabitants. Brazil's far-right President Bolsonaro has controversially downplayed the virus and contradicted expert advice on how to slow its spread. Experts say vaccinating the country's 200 million population is the only way out of this crisis. But the country is struggling to secure enough vaccines. According to the government, as of May 9th, 46.8 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine have been distributed. Health Minister Marcelo Quiroga has called on countries to share spare vaccines so that Brazil can meet its vaccine demands.
During a pandemic, a fair and equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines needs to be in accordance with the epidemic situation. This is why we are calling again on those who have a vaccine surplus to share it with Brazil as soon as possible, so we can move forward and broaden our vaccination campaign.
In Brazil, the failure to control the spread has been compounded by the health ministry betting big on a single vaccine, AstraZeneca, then buying only one backup, the Chinese-manufactured CoronaVac. In August 2020, Brazil's government turned down an offer from Pfizer to purchase up to 70 million doses of its vaccine. It has now ordered 100 million doses of Pfizer's vaccine and another 38 million of Johnson & Johnson's, but they will not arrive until the second half of the year. Chile has led one of the fastest vaccination processes in Latin America and the world. But it has slowed down in recent weeks, giving priority to second doses. Chile has fully immunized over 32% of its population, far more than any other nation in Latin America. More than 90% of the doses administered have been CoronaVac, a vaccine produced by Beijing-based pharmaceutical company Sinovac. Data on the efficacy of the CoronaVac vaccine has produced mixed results. Interestingly, Chile has designated pregnant women a COVID-19 vaccination priority and is issuing Pfizer doses to those with underlying health issues in their second or third trimesters. It is the first country to roll out vaccinations for pregnant women. The UK and the United States too have updated their guidance to include pregnant women.
I think it is a good initiative, especially for protection, because we do not know how this virus mutates. I did not come here because I wanted to. I came here because my doctor asked me to get vaccinated. It is authorized to vaccinate pregnant women.
Chile's experience of the pandemic is being watched anxiously by many beyond its borders to see how much its vaccination campaign will mitigate successive waves of the virus. On March 28, 2021, Argentina received the first batch of vaccines against COVID-19 acquired through the COVAX mechanism. A shipment of 218,000 doses of AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine reached the country. While many received vaccination, the country is currently making headlines not for its rising cases of COVID-19, but for this. Argentina has become the first Latin American country to start manufacturing Russia's Sputnik V. Till now, only 1.8% of the country's population has been fully immunized. United Kingdom became the first country to approve the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine on December 30th. However, the vaccine rollout started on December 8th with Pfizer. It was the world's first mass immunization campaign against SARS-CoV-2.
I would say go for it. Go for it because it's free and it's the best thing that's ever happened at the moment. So please go for it. That's all I say, you know. If I can do it, well, so can you.
91-year-old Margaret Keenan was the first person to receive the jab. By now, more than 35 million people in the UK have got at least one dose of a coronavirus vaccine, and over 16 million have had a second. It has a population of 67 million. Only those over the age of 50 and those in high-risk groups have been eligible for the jab so far. England has vaccinated 95% of the same age group. 98% of those aged above 50 in Scotland has received the first shot. Northern Ireland has a success rate of 93%. 92% of people above 50 in Wales have got their first dose. The vaccination rollout will now move on to focus on those aged 40 to 49. The government plans to vaccinate the rest of the adult population by the end of July. It is also being reported that everyone aged over 50 in Britain will be offered a third COVID-19 vaccination jab in the autumn, in an attempt to eradicate the threat from the infection entirely by Christmas. Lockdown rules are easing across much of the UK from May 17th. Before that, events are taking place in Liverpool to test crowd safety and the impact of easing lockdown rules. Recently, in a ceremonial event, the Queen opened a new session of Parliament.
My lords, pray be seated.
So, can UK beat the virus with its vaccination program? We'll know in the coming weeks. Concert with no social distancing. This was a test concert held in the Spanish city of Barcelona in the second half of April. Around 5,000 music fans took part in this experiment after testing negative for COVID-19. Attendees wore masks but were not required to socially distance, and now after 14 days, researchers have found no sign of higher levels of infection among people who took part in the event. However, 6 people tested positive within 2 weeks of attending the gig. According to experts, this count was much lower than that seen in the general population. One of Europe's worst-hit nations, Spain has suffered 78,792 coronavirus deaths and 3.6 million cases. But infection rates have fallen and vaccinations are progressing fast, enabling most of the country to scrap their 6-month-long curfew. People were seen celebrating this moment by dancing on the street. More than 6 million people in Spain now have the full protection offered by the COVID-19 vaccines being used by the country's health authorities. Their Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez Venture even put a date on the end of the health crisis: August 18th. Let's hope that Spain meets its target 3 months down the line. Restrictions have been lifted in some parts of Germany too. As its vaccination drive reaches a third of adults and COVID-19 infections ease, Europe is starting to reopen cities and beaches, raising hopes that this summer's holiday season can be saved before it's too late.
I find it great, so finally sunshine again, that you can sit outside, and also a great thing for the restaurant operators that it starts again. And for us too, of course, and now we're allowed to get out and get some air again.
Germany has decided to make the 2 vaccines, Pfizer and Oxford AstraZeneca, available to anyone who wants them, as long as they have been advised by a doctor, an offer aimed at younger adults who would have to wait their turn otherwise. The country is moving one step closer to normalcy. The Berlin Film Festival, which took place online earlier this year, will show most of the movies that were part of the competition at outdoor cinemas across the German capital next month, taking advantage of falling COVID-19 infection numbers. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen tweeted, "With 200 million vaccine doses delivered, the European Union is on track to achieve its goal of inoculating 70% of its adult population by summer." In France, younger people are now getting COVID vaccine jabs since the government opened vaccination to all adults. So far, some 18.1 million people have had 1 dose of vaccine, while near 8 million have had 2 in France. Europe's vaccination rollout has lagged behind those in Britain and the United States, but now they are showing progress. In Russia, it's time for ice hockey. The country's President Vladimir Putin scored several goals in a game of ice hockey recently. He appeared in an amateur league for the first time since the coronavirus pandemic began. Putin, who was vaccinated against COVID-19 over a month ago, said that he had tested his levels of protective antibodies generated by vaccination and had seen strong results. Wearing a full ice hockey kit and a number 11 shirt, Putin played in front of an audience gathered for an indoor gala event. According to the Russian government, 21.5 million Russians, about 15% of the population, had now been vaccinated against COVID-19. On August 11th last year, it was reported that Russia's vaccine, Sputnik V, was the first registered coronavirus vaccine in the world. Emergency mass distribution of the vaccine began in December 2020 in countries including Russia, Argentina, Belarus, Hungary, Serbia, and the United Arab Emirates. By February 2021, over 1 billion doses of the vaccine had been ordered for immediate distribution to over 60 countries, including India. India began the world's biggest coronavirus vaccination program on January 16th, with priority given to an estimated 30 million healthcare and frontline workers. By May 6th, over 162 million doses had been administered, the third highest number in the world after the US and China. About 11.17% of the population has been covered with one dose and 1.96% with two doses. India, one of the world's biggest suppliers of vaccines, is relying on two vaccines. Covishield, a version of the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine manufactured by the Serum Institute of India, and Covaxin, developed by Bharat Biotech. However, India has been witnessing a devastating second wave since April, prompting the government to open up vaccinations to all those above 18 years of age from May 1st. A target of immunizing 300 million people by July 2021 was made in December 2020. Less than 3 months from the deadline, only 25% of the target has been met. Look at this ad. The printed ad appears in 3 national newspapers in Japan on May 11th. It shows an illustration of the coronavirus overlaid on a black and white World War II era photo of Japanese children training to fight with sticks. And it says, "No vaccine, no medication. Are we supposed to fight with bamboo spears? If this continues, politics are going to kill us." The full-page ad by magazine publisher Takarajimasha was a rare rebuke of the country's pandemic response by a private company. The Tokyo-based company said in a news release it was necessary to raise an alarm over the public's frustration with virus restrictions and the slow pace of vaccinations. Japan began its inoculation push in February, later than most major economies. Only 0.9% of the Japanese public have received their first shot so far. Japan has extended a state of emergency in Tokyo until the end of May and is struggling to contain a surge in cases. Public pressure is mounting for the Olympics to be called off.
Can we really hold safe Olympics for everyone under these circumstances? I don't think we can say yes with confidence right now.
The 2020 Games, already delayed by 1 year, are due to begin on July 23rd. With weeks to go, an opinion poll showed nearly 60% of people in Japan want the Games cancelled. Around 200 million Chinese, or 14.29% of the population, have been vaccinated for COVID-19 so far, while China was among the first countries to begin administering vaccines last year and has been exporting millions of doses of its domestically developed shots to other countries. The vaccination rate for its own population fell behind those of countries such as the United States and Israel. The country has approved 4 domestically developed vaccines and has exported over 115 million vaccine doses. But concerns about the efficacy of Sinovac and Sinopharm has dented their reputation. So far, China has not approved COVID-19 vaccines developed by any foreign drug maker. South Africa is the worst-hit country in the African continent in terms of reported coronavirus infections and deaths. So far, it has only vaccinated around 0.7% of its population. This includes the president, Cyril Ramaphosa. After suspending the rollout of the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine due to initial trials showing disappointing results against the B.1.351 variant of COVID-19. The country has only counted on the single-dose J&J and double-shot Pfizer vaccines to ramp up immunization. This African country is one of the few countries of the world that does not have a single COVID-19 vaccine dose to administer. Chad is one of the vaccine deserts of the world.
I think it's a royal shame that until now, while elsewhere everyone has been vaccinated, we have not been vaccinated, especially health workers.
In Chad, even frontline workers like doctors and nurses don't have access to COVID vaccines. The World Health Organization says nearly a dozen countries, many of them in Africa, are still waiting to get vaccines. Those last in line on the continent, along with Chad, are Burkina Faso, Burundi, Eritrea, and Tanzania. One of the world's success stories in its fight against COVID-19, Australia has been rather slow in its vaccine rollout. The mass vaccination of its 25 million population began only in late February 2021. Last month, it fell 85% short of its own target. Supply shortages and delivery problems have been blamed for the delays. It aimed at vaccinating 4 million citizens till March, but has only been able to inoculate 2.8 million people. At this speed, Prime Minister Scott Morrison's end-of-year vaccination goal seems a bit jittery. Interestingly, the country has started vaccinating its athletes ahead of Tokyo Games. The Australian Olympic Committee AOC has set up vaccination centres in Australia's state capitals and Canberra. More than 2,000 athletes, coaches and officials nominated by the AOC and Paralympics Australia are expected to receive their shots before they travel. Both Australia and New Zealand have managed to contain the virus through strict lockdowns and international border closures, and are in no rush to vaccinate. New Zealand expects its nationwide rollout, covering the country's population of 5 million, will take a full year, while Australia aims to inoculate its 25 million citizens by October. Herd immunity against COVID-19 can only be achieved by protecting people through vaccination. And people in every country in the world are clamoring for COVID-19 vaccines. Unfortunately, developed economies have hoarded COVID-19 vaccines. It is estimated that rich countries with just 16% of the world's population have purchased 60% of available vaccine supplies. With vaccinations happening more rapidly in richer Western countries than the rest of the globe, it will take the world as a whole 7 years at the current pace. This has to change. The message is clear for rich nations. Help vaccinate the developing world or face a prolonged pandemic.